Chapter 2677. Yiqing Luo was stunned as her gaze swiftly swept to the side. Sensing that the courtyard had already been sealed off by the Ghost Martial Sect's spirit formation, the Ghost Martial Sect's spirit formation started to tremble. Only then did she react. Master Grey Wu, thank you. Yiqing Luo took a look at Xiao Jin, carry him back to the room. Just now the people from those forces had indeed fled very quickly. However, this did not mean that no one would be crowding around the courtyard looking around. If not for the Ghost Martial Technique spirit formation which had covered up everything that had happened in the courtyard, the Ghost Martial Technique would not have been able to see it. Just like the atmosphere between Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo earlier, Zhou Xian had already fainted. It would definitely set off a wave in the Nirvana realm. With the help of Xiao Jin, very quickly they returned to Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo's room. Everyone could tell that earlier the battle between Zhou Xian and the centrifugal force worm had already made Yiqing Luo extremely worried. Naturally, he would not disturb the two of them. The two of them left the room one by one. The unconscious Zhou Xian was restless. To be more precise, he was still fighting against the goo worm in his body while he was unconscious. Yiqing Luo's heart ached incomparably, as she had been busy taking care of and comforting Zhou Xian by his bedside. It was until the hour of the ean, which was about 3 or 4 in the morning, when she laid down on the side of the bed, holding on to Zhou Xian's hand and fell into a deep sleep. In a daze. She felt cold. But soon his body seemed to be dragged up by something. She tried to open her eyes. However, the heaviness of her eyelids and the familiar scent of sandalwood made her unable to raise her guard. Warmth covered her. In an instant her entire body felt cold. After an unknown period of time. When Yiqing Luo woke up, it was already bright outside. The piercing light made her raise her hand to rub her eyes. But when he moved, only then did he realize that he couldn't move his hand at all. It wasn't just the hands. Her entire body was wrapped in the embrace of a burning hot muscular body. The elegant sandalwood fragrance lingered in the air. She blinked her charming eyes and raised her head in a daze, only to see the sleeping face that was as handsome as a god. Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly. Yesterday she had accompanied Zhou Xian back to his room, and it was only until the wee hours before she fell asleep. She still remembered. He was just lying on the edge of the bed pretending to be asleep. Why was it that at this moment she was on the bed, and was even encircled in Zhou Xian's arms? When did her vigilance and perception become so weak? Looking at the still unconscious Zhou Xian. The image in her mind was of him looking at her with a cold and indifferent gaze. She stayed in Xian's arms. Wouldn't that make the centrifugal goo even more violent? Xian had fought against the centrifugal goo for so long. He must be very tired. He could not let him continue to waste his energy. Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened. She immediately and carefully removed the hands around her waist and was about to get up. However, the hand on her waist suddenly tightened its grip. She abruptly fell back onto the soft bed. Her little face bumped into the man's hard chest. Little Luo, oh. The hoarse voice of the man who had just regained consciousness was transmitted into Yiqing Luo's ears. This cry. Sue's Yiqing Luo's body almost went soft. The man bent his waist slightly as he tightened his grip on the person in his arms. His warm breath sprayed onto her exposed skin. He even panted slightly, "Little Luo, don't move." As his words left his mouth. Chapter 2678. Yiqing Luo's delicate body suddenly trembled. The familiar gentleness and the affectionate kiss from the man made her momentarily forget to struggle. Xian, she gasped and called out his name in disbelief. Little Luo, I'm here. His low and hoarse voice murmured indistinctly. Yiqing Luo's trembling intensified. Zhou Xian's voice at this moment had really. She was unable to control herself. Oh, Zhou Xian seemed to be following his instinct, trying to ease the discomfort in his body after he opened his eyes. His hand instinctively locked onto Yiqing Luo's petite body. Until the man's large palm touched a certain spot. Yiqing Luo, who was still in a daze, suddenly widened her eyes and panted, pushing away the man's pressing chest. Xian. Calm down. The current Zhou Xian. Clearly he had switched back to the love goo in his body. A pair of aggrieved eyes like those of a large puppy looked at her pitifully. That pair of peach blossom eyes were currently tinged with some sort of emotion. He looked exceptionally demonic. It was extremely enchanting. He could force a young girl from a good family to turn into a wolf in a matter of minutes. Yiqing Luo swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forcibly suppressed the urge to be teased by the man. "Ah Xian, you've just woken up, I'll get someone to fetch water, you can take a bath." "No." Dmo Xian's hoarse voice carried a hint of coquettishness. He covered Yiqing Luo once again. His hands encircled her, as if his body could only feel a trace of comfort when he touched Yiqing Luo's delicate body. However, this was not enough. It was far from enough. "Ah Xian." Yiqing Luo increased her strength as she pushed him. In Dmo Xian's body, there was not only one kind of love goo poison. What if she couldn't control herself and was unable to extricate herself from Dmo Xian's charm? Dmo Xian was knocked down. After activating the venom of centrifugal force, wouldn't Dmo Xian suffer again? At this critical juncture, he absolutely had to hold on. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes and hardened her heart, avoiding the temptation of Dmo Xian's beauty. "Lil Luo, don't push me. I'm uncomfortable. Want Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's hoarse voice sounded aggrieved as he kept on muttering softly. Yiqing Luo forcefully pried his hand away. "I'll feel better after the bath." When men woke up early in the morning, they would indeed have that kind of impulse. Especially like the current Dmo Xian, the only thing on his mind was her. Naturally, he would not be able to restrain himself. "Lil Luo." The man's voice was even more aggrieved, like the low whine of a puppy. Yiqing Luo's heart softened, but thinking of the centrifugal venom in his body, she could only harden her heart. "Be good, I'll help you wash, you'll feel better after washing." Finishing her words, she did not wait for Dmo Xian to continue acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo didn't even want to look anymore. She murmured, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Stay calm. Calm down." At the same time he shouted towards the outside, "Get a few buckets of cold water." Very quickly Qiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi carried several buckets of cold water. Seeing Yiqing Luo's messy hair and messy clothes, he looked at her ambiguously as though he had been through the same thing before. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she blocked the entrance, not letting their line of sight into the room. Following that, she lifted a bucket of water as her lips curled into a cold smile. "Early in the morning and the two of you are here so quickly, could it be that Jinzi can't do it?" Saying that, she even used her eyes to glance at Qiao Jin. Who can't do it?" Qiao Jin's eyes instantly widened as he was so angry that he clenched his teeth to refute. But the person in front of him was a young lady. Chapter 2679. If that's the case, why are you still squatting in the corner of Xian and me so early in the morning? Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Qiao Jin, looking at Qiao Jin, who was so angry that his face was flushed red. She had been suppressing the feeling of not being able to pounce on a certain evildoer and finally felt great. Yan Xiaoyi also blushed. No matter how much she blabbered out, she couldn't be like Yiqing Luo, putting such matters at the tip of her tongue. Yiqing Luo was really vengeful. Even teasing her would result in retaliation. Yan Xiaoyi expressed that they could no longer be friends happily. After a long while he finally said, We were worried about you." Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she listened to the man on the bed who had his mouth shut, but his breathing was getting heavier and heavier. He no longer had the mood to tease Yan Xiaoyi and Qiao Jin. He simply explained, "He fought with the centrifugal goo for an entire night and sweated a lot. Now he looks like he was poisoned by the love goo. I have to help him wipe his sweat." "Just like this?" Yan Xiaoyi squinted her beautiful eyes as she sized up the messy Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't answer but curled her lips into a brilliant smile. "Not getting lost now, are you trying to sneak a peek at my Xian's tight abs?" Yan Xiaoyi. How would she dare to imagine the overlord's abs? "You're being too careless with your blackening." Qiao Jin widened his eyes. His eyes passed through Yiqing Luo and looked into the room. Then he looked at Yan Xiaoyi, who had a stiff expression. His mind was filled with the image of the overlord's outstanding charm. Qiao Jin's expression instantly darkened. He hooked Yan Xiaoyi with one arm and directly carried her in his arms, walking back. "You want to see my abs? Let's go. Let's go back to the room, I'll let you see all you want." Yan Xiaoyi. Faster see. "Slut Jin, are you a person who can be incited so easily?" Sending off this pair of happy lovers, Yiqing Luo carried the cold water bucket by bucket into the room. Only then did he close the door and lock it. She placed the bathtub down and poured a bucket of water into it. On the other side of the bed, a heavy object fell to the ground with a thud. The bucket in Yiqing Luo's hand fell onto the ground. She looked back quickly. Sure enough, she saw Damo Xian squatting beside the bed. There was a faint blush on that peerless and devilish face. His black hair was scattered over his shoulders, giving him a somewhat messy and demonic feeling. His purple robe hung loosely on his body. The waist seal was nowhere to be found. He struggled to get up from the ground. He moved. His purple robe fluttered. A large part of his chest was revealed. He could vaguely see the perfect mermaid lines. Yiqing Luo's heart pounded furiously. That restless feeling in his heart. He began to clamor for her sanity again. A monster. An absolute monster. Wasn't he afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself and would pounce on him? Was it really okay to test her patience like this? Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and muttered, "Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness," as she strode towards Damo Xian. "Ah Xian, are you hurt anywhere?" Lil Luo, Damo Xian seemed to have finally sensed an aura that made him feel at ease, as a sliver of a smile surfaced on that thin red devilish face of Damo Xian. Yiqing Luo just got closer. Her wrist was grabbed by the man with great force. She fiercely rubbed into his arms. A warm and urgent kiss quickly fell on her body. Lil Luo, don't leave me, I feel terrible. Damo Xian was like a dog-type pet that had fallen out of favor as he whimpered aggrievedly. Chapter 2680. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's face flushed red as she held onto Damo Xian's hand. "Let's go, you will feel better soon." Damo Xian threw a tantrum and refused to leave. Yiqing Luo half coaxed and half dragged and finally brought Damo Xian to the side of the bathtub. As for herself, during this process he was only left with a thin layer of clothing. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and pointed to the bathtub. "Ah Xian, go in, I'll help you bathe." The man who couldn't bear to leave Yiqing Luo's soft skin let out a few whimpers from his nose. Yiqing Luo coaxed in a low voice, "Be good, trust me, if you don't want to feel uncomfortable then go in." Damo Xian unwillingly lifted his leg and stepped into the bathtub. Yiqing Luo immediately stretched out her hand and carelessly tore off the robe hanging on his body. His muscles were taut and his body was so perfect that it made one's heart beat faster. Completely exposed in front of Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo felt that right now. Her eyes were absolutely radiating a wolf's light. She felt extremely wronged. This man clearly belonged to her. But it was right before their eyes. He could only watch, but he couldn't go overboard. It was too torturous. In order to suppress the burning flame in his heart, Yiqing Luo lifted another bucket of water and poured it onto Damo Xian's body. Damo Xian stood in the bathtub. Droplets of water slid down along his perfect mermaid line. Lil Luo, I still feel terrible. After Damo Xian was splashed with water, he didn't feel any relief like what Yiqing Luo had imagined. On the contrary, it seemed to be on the rise. Yiqing Luo poured several buckets of cold water onto Damo Xian's body. Then he pressed Damo Xian down into the bathtub. He soaked in the cold water until it was almost hot. Damo Xian still had no intention of easing up. If this went on, Damo Xian might suffocate to death. Right? Yiqing Luo lowered her head as she looked at her own hands and then at Damo Xian's flushed red face. A thin layer of sweat rolled down from his forehead. He was poisoned by the love goo. He did not know how to control himself at all. Especially when he looked at Yiqing Luo. Other than hugging Yiqing Luo and kissing her, he followed his instincts. He couldn't think of anything. He could not hope for Damo Xian to suppress himself. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes and put her hand into the bathtub. "Ah Xian, be good, don't move." By the time Damo Xian and Yiqing Luo walked out of the room, it was already 2 hours later. Everyone was still sitting at the stone tables and chairs in the courtyard. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin were not here. Miao Yi and the others saw the two of them coming out. Damo Xian stared intently at Yiqing Luo, as though there was no room for anyone else in his eyes, which made everyone understand. The current Damo Xian. It was Damo Xian who had been poisoned by the love worm. The crowd heaved a sigh of relief. Yiqing Luo walked over. "Ah Xian's venom is too chaotic. If he continues to stay in the Qingyue clan, there will be too many mouths and it will be easy to be discovered." The others nodded in agreement. Yiqing Luo looked at Gui Wu. I'm going to stay at the Peach Blossom restaurant. Peach's place is extremely secretive as long as the centrifugal venom doesn't cause any mischief, and calmly wait for a month. There should be no problem. Master Guiwu, do you want to join us? Before Guiwu could say anything, Zhou Mo, who was standing by the side, suddenly pounded the table. Of course I want to join you. Little Wildcat insists on following you, so of course I want to go. Guiwu. Yiqing Luo nodded. Then it's settled. I'll go look for Sect Master Yin to bid farewell, then contact Peach to arrange a room for you. Guiwu. No one asked for his opinion. Yiqing Luo had already held on to Dmo Xian's arm as they walked out of the courtyard. Chapter 2681. As Yiqing Luo walked, she reminded Dmo Xian in a low voice, reminding Dmo Xian to meet Yin Qinghao later. He only needed to maintain his aloofness as an overlord. Yin Qinghao was the patriarch of Qinyu clan, so he was definitely smarter and sharper than the average person. Just by looking at Qinyu clan's status in the northern continent, it was obvious. Especially when compared to when her scum father was still the patriarch of Three Springs sect. This further highlighted Yin Qinghao's intelligence. So Yiqing Luo didn't dare to belittle Yin Qinghao. She must prevent Yin Qinghao from detecting Dmo Xian's abnormality. Looking at the nearer and nearer hospital admission, she took a look at Dmo Xian, who was staring at her in a daze, without shifting his gaze away. Yiqing Luo sighed as she raised her hands and cupped Dmo Xian's face. She slowly tiptoed and got close to his ear. The servants and maids who were passing by saw this scene. They only felt that the scene of this golden couple displaying their affection in public was really beautiful. This society that only looked at faces. As long as they looked good. Even the public display of affection was so pleasing to the eye. Yiqing Luo laughed softly in his ear. Looking at the man's white neck, her long and narrow eyes flowing light flashed. Ah Xian, obediently stand beside me. I don't let you speak, don't let you move, okay? Dmo Xian's arms suddenly hugged her tightly in his arms. His body was well built and his muscles were firm and extremely hot. Yiqing Luo's thoughts suddenly drifted to the scene of her bathing for Dmo Xian when she woke up today. Her cheeks blushed slightly. She raised her hand and was about to push away Dmo Xian's burning hot chest. The man's husky voice with the taste of a puppy rang softly. I'm obedient, Lil Luo, or wants to give me a reward. All right. Yiqing Luo smiled, her eyes curved as she tiptoed and touched his thin lips. But unexpectedly, the man whose eyes lit up when she kissed him, this time after accepting her kiss, hugged her tightly again. After that, he looked at her seriously. The reward I want is the reward for Lil Luo, or helping me bathe today. Yiqing Luo. It took her a lot of effort to erase those images. Now that he mentioned it again, was he doing it on purpose? Since when did her family's pet learn to be bad? Lil Luo, help me bathe, it's very comfortable, I want more. Dmo Xian continued, his peach blossom eyes overflowing with resplendent radiance like stars. This made Yiqing Luo totally unable to open her mouth to say any words of rejection. Dmo Xian's waist bent slightly as he lowered his body. That cold, peerless face was magnified in Yiqing Luo's pupils at such a close distance. The dense kisses fell on her face bit by bit. Accompanied by the man's hoarse voice, if Lil Luo, doesn't give me a reward, I won't listen. Yiqing Luo. Didn't he say that he would be attached to her and listen to her after being poisoned by the love goo? Now he actually dared to turn the tables on her? Under the insistence of Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo was eventually defeated. Forget it. Helping him once is also helping him. Helping twice is still helping. Who asked this puppy to become like this because of her? Who asked this puppy to be the man she loved the most? She could only pamper him. But after his goo poison was cured, Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed past a cold glint. Humph, she must definitely get back at him. The two of them had already walked out of the hospital and saw Butler Yin walking over. Chapter 2682. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks. Housekeeper Yin was all smiles. Sovereign asked me to invite Miss Yi over to discuss something important. Something important? Yiqing Luo raised her brows slightly. She glanced at Dmo Xian from the corner of her eyes. Dmo Xian's expression was indifferent, but his gaze towards her was gentle, as though he couldn't see housekeeper Yin's existence. She heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Dmo Xian maintained this look, no matter what Yin Qinghao wanted to discuss with her. She didn't need to worry that Yin Qinghao would detect DMO Xian's abnormality. She smiled and pinched DMO Xian's palm in the dark, smiling, "Then I'll have to trouble Housekeeper Yin to lead the way." "Overlord, please, Miss Yi, please." Housekeeper Yin immediately stretched out his hand and respectfully welcomed the both of them as they walked into the main courtyard. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, Housekeeper Yin brought the both of them to a more secluded but extremely safe study room. "Sovereign is waiting for both of you inside." Housekeeper Yin bowed slightly. The room door opened and Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian walked in. The study room was extremely spacious and the surroundings were filled with bookshelves. On the bookshelves there were all kinds of books neatly arranged. There were 2 office tables, one on the left and one on the right. Yin Qinghao was sitting at the right side of the table. Beside him was the suave Yin Yanxiu. Seeing the both of them entering, Yin Qinghao stood up and laughed heartily. "Overlord, Miss Yi, you're here. Come, have a seat, have a seat." Yiqing Luo didn't stand on ceremony. She pulled DMO Xian over and sat opposite Yin Qinghao. The smile on Yin Qinghao's face deepened as he poured a cup of tea for DMO Xian and Yiqing Luo as he smiled. "I'd not expected that when I mentioned Miss Yi earlier, Miss Yi would come over. What a coincidence." If there was anyone else around to see this scene, they would probably be so shocked that their jaws would drop onto the ground. Since when did the overlord of Qin Yu clan personally pour tea for others? Even if the various continents' monarchs were here, or the other 3 continents' overlords, they wouldn't be able to drink the tea personally poured by Qin Yu clan's overlord. But Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian in front of Yin Qinghao were considered as juniors among juniors. Yet Yin Qinghao had personally poured tea for her. He even had a smile on his face as if he didn't have any grudges. In this world, only these 2 people could be treated like this by Yin Qinghao. "I also happen to want to discuss something with Sect Master Yin." Yiqing Luo wasn't pretentious as her eyes curved slightly, looking as though she was in a good mood. "I wonder what's the reason why Sect Master Yin is looking for me." Yin Qinghao picked up the teacup and took a sip. His eyes were blurred by the steam from the tea and his expression could not be seen clearly. "This is what I promised the overlord that I would do after the birthday banquet." "DMO Xian?" Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. He shot a sideways glance at DMO Xian. What deal did DMO Xian and Yin Qinghao discuss in private previously? But the current DMO Xian, he probably didn't remember what deal he had made with Yin Qinghao. Yiqing Luo held DMO Xian's hand tightly as she coughed lightly, making her own emotions and tone appear calm and tranquil. "Oh? What's so mysterious about it?" Yin Qinghao didn't say a word as he put down the teacup and fixed his gaze on DMO Xian. Yiqing Luo didn't know what the deal between the both of them was. She also didn't know what kind of response she should let DMO Xian make. Just as she was thinking, suddenly the man beside her moved slightly. Chapter 2683. "Just do as I said," said Yi Futian. His cold voice was noble and elegant without any trace of emotions. Yin Qinghao immediately nodded his head and whispered to Yin Yanxiu, "Take good care of the overlord and Miss Yi, I'll be right back." "Yes, father." Yin Yanxiu bowed slightly. Yin Qinghao cupped his hands in greeting towards DMO Xian's direction as he turned around and walked towards one of the bookshelves. He didn't avoid it. And in front of Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian, he directly opened the secret room of the bookshelf and walked in. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze as she leaned her soft body into DMO Xian's arms. Her hand, at a place where Yin Yanxiu couldn't see, pinched DMO Xian's waist fiercely. The firm feeling was extremely good to touch. Yiqing Luo loved the feeling of a man's body. It could be said that she couldn't bear to part with it. Yiqing Luo raised her head slightly as her chin rested on his chest. That elegant face stared straight at DMO Xian. As though she was puzzled, why would DMO Xian still have those memories of his private transactions with Yin Qinghao? And it would be at the most opportune timing. Making the most opportune response? DMO Xian's eyes drooped. His jet black peach blossom eyes met her eyes. The man's eyes were filled with a gentle and loving smile. He bent his head and accurately kissed her on the lips. Like a deity's handsome face, the warm touch, the elegant sandalwood scent, made Yiqing Luo dazed for a moment. When she regained her senses, after realizing the man's actions, her cheeks were stained with a faint shade of red. Yin Yanxiu was still watching by the side. He kissed her just like that. Didn't she want her face? But the next moment, accompanied by the man's gentle kiss, the man's smiling voice floated over, "I did well, I want a reward." Yiqing Luo. So he was all aiming for the reward? For the reward he could actually use his brain to think of other things other than her? This kiss wasn't long. But it was enough to make Yiqing Luo's face flushed red. Until Dmo Xian released Yiqing Luo's lips. Yiqing Luo then pushed Dmo Xian's chest away fiercely and shifted towards her own position. She sat upright, picked up the teacup in front of her and held it with both hands, covering half of her face. She looked up and happened to see Xianxia's smiling expression. Her face turned even redder. One had to know that in Xianxia's eyes, she must have been the one who took the initiative to provoke Dmo Xian. She nestled beside Dmo Xian and raised her head to look at his posture. It really did look like he was asking for a kiss. Damn it! Could Xianxia have misunderstood something? Yiqing Luo coughed violently. Miss Ye's relationship with Dizun is really enviable. Xianxia saw Yiqing Luo's predicament as he laughed softly and his tone was filled with envy. I hope that in future I will also be able to meet such sincere feelings like Miss Yi and the Overlord. Yiqing Luo coughed even more violently. Looking at Yiqing Luo's blushing face, Xianxia didn't wish to see any embarrassing things happen, so he automatically shifted the topic. I wonder what Miss Yi is looking for father for? Yiqing Luo was naturally happy to shift the topic as she gave a dry laugh. I'm here to bid farewell to Sect Master Yin. Farewell? Xianxia was stunned. If Qingyue sect has any unsatisfactory hospitality, will Miss Yi please point it out? Chapter 2684. Xianxia suddenly straightened his body. If Miss Yi feels that the Qingyue sect is too noisy, I can also ask my father to transfer all the forces that are staying here, young sect master Yin. Yiqing Luo interrupted his words. As the young matriarch of Qinyu clan, there are some things that you should know what to say and what not to say. Xianxia's words were stuck in his throat. Indeed, as the young matriarch of the Qingyue sect, if he really made those powerhouses who were staying in the Qingyue sect leave because they wanted Yiqing Luo to stay, this young sect master, it was a complete corruption of character. It would also ruin the Qinyu sect's reputation. Xianxia's face flushed red. It seemed that even he himself did not understand. At the instance when he heard Yiqing Luo saying her farewells, he actually spoke out all the thoughts in his heart without thinking it through. Yiqing Luo didn't want Xianxia to continue feeling awkward. We'll be leaving later. Of course, if Qinyu clan needs my help, as long as it's within my capabilities, I'll still be able to help. Xianxia nodded his head absent-mindedly and grunted. He knew that Yi Luo was smart. His actions just now. Yi Luo must have seen through his thoughts. In fact, he did have a good impression of Yi Luo. However, he also knew that there was a huge gap between him and Dizun. He only wanted to be friends with Yi Qingqing and that was enough. Unexpectedly, he still couldn't control his emotions. As the young sect master of the Qinyu sect, his words and actions represented the Qinyu sect. He should be trying his best to control his emotions. Because of this episode, the two of them didn't speak anymore. Yiqing Luo was just about to go drink some tea. Suddenly, a hand reached out and gripped her teacup. Yiqing Luo was startled and glanced sideways, only to see Dmo Xian putting on a straight face as he heavily placed the teacup in her hands onto the table. Following that, he grabbed Yiqing Luo's wrist. He pulled hard. Yiqing Luo fell into Dmo Xian's embrace. The man's hand circled her waist forcefully. The other hand also circled around, not giving Yiqing Luo any chance to struggle. "Ah Xian." Yiqing Luo called out to him softly as she shot a sideways glance at Xianxia. The man lowered his head and bit her on the neck. He bit down hard. Yiqing Luo frowned in pain. This scene caused Xianxia's gaze to wander around helplessly, not daring to look at them. Naturally, she missed out on Dmo Xian's current expression, which was like a dog-like pet who had been snatched away. "Ah Xian." Yiqing Luo called out in a low voice as her little hand pushed against his chest. "Pain?" I heard her cry out in pain. Dmo Xian then loosened the strength of his teeth. The man's voice was full of grievance and displeasure. He moved closer to her ear and said in a very low voice, "I don't like you talking to him." That he was referring to Xianxia. He was jealous. Yiqing Luo smiled as she raised her hand to stroke his fur. "We're just discussing some matters. After we're done, we'll leave this place and won't have any more interactions with him." Xian was still unhappy as he clenched his fists and gave a childish snort in her ear. Mine. Yours. Luo continued to stroke his fur. She liked this feeling of being so attached to by Xian. Stroking his fur. There was a sound coming from the bookshelf. Qinghao's figure once again appeared in the study room. In his hand there was an additional jade box which was emitting a white glow. Luo's eyes flashed slightly. Chapter 2685. That moonlight porcelain box was approximately the size of Qinghao's palm. Qinghao used such a rare and precious moonlight porcelain to carve the jade box. What was inside? What on earth was it? The thing in the moonlight porcelain box was absolutely very important. Luo stood up from Xian's arms. Qinghao carefully carried the moonlight porcelain box with both hands as he returned to his seat and smiled. I've made the Overlord and Miss Yi wait for a long time. Luo stared at the moonlight porcelain box. Sect Master this is. Qinghao placed the thing on the table, and although he was smiling, but Luo, who was good at observing, how could she not tell? Qinghao's face was filled with complicated and unwillingness. Apparently he didn't want to take this thing out. But he had no choice but to take it out. After a long time, Qinghao shut his eyes as though he had lost all his strength as he leaned against the back of the chair. Miss Yi, this is my Qinhuasek's ancestral treasure. Black tortoise bead. Black tortoise bead? Hearing these three words, Luo abruptly stood up from Xian's arms. Her eyes widened as she stared at the moonlight porcelain box in disbelief. You said? This is the black tortoise bead? This was one of the sacred beast beads. Black tortoise bead? The sacred beast bead which was guarded by the four major sects? Qinhua sect had been guarding the black tortoise bead for tens of thousands of years, passed down from generation to generation. Qinghao's voice was slightly hoarse. This thing, what use does it have? As the descendants of Qinhua sect, we don't know. He paused as he raised his head and pushed the moonlight porcelain box towards Luo. I know Miss Yi needs the black tortoise bead. Luo looked at the jade box which was emitting fluorescent light as her breathing tightened slightly. She turned her head sideways as she looked at the man beside her. Qinghao would automatically take out the black tortoise bead. It must be Xian's intention. What on earth did Xian offer in exchange? To actually make Qinghao hand over his ancestral heirloom with both hands. Miss Yi, this matter. Actually, it's not considered as a deal between me and the Overlord. Qinghao saw Luo's expression and guessed what she was thinking. Not a deal? If it wasn't a trade, how could Qinghao take out his ancestral treasure? Qinghao smiled and said, although His Majesty is known to be cruel, bloodthirsty and ruthless, I know that His Majesty is not a person who kills innocent people. He's the strongest person in the Nirvana realm, and the person that everyone in the Nirvana realm yearns to be his disciple. He naturally has his reasons for asking me to hand the black tortoise orb to you. He paused again. The reluctance on his face gradually disappeared. Of course, I'm not giving you the black tortoise bead. Qinghao replied, I'm only lending it to Miss Yi. After Miss Yi finishes using it, I'll return it to the Qinhua sect. Luo pursed her pink lips. She fixed her eyes on the moonlight porcelain box. His heart was in a mess. Black tortoise pearl. The first sacred beast pearl had already appeared. If she accepted it, it meant that she had already chosen the second path to the upper realm. Gathering all the sacred beast pearls. This was the choice that Xian had made for her. Luo's gaze slowly shifted onto Xian. He hoped that she could go to the upper realm, hoping that she could improve herself as soon as possible, hoping that she could climb to the peak. The only way was to head to the upper realm as soon as possible. Then she could become stronger faster. Chapter 2686. Luo was still deep in her thoughts. Suddenly being leaned on by Xian. Her petite body trembled slightly. Listening to the man's slightly aggrieved voice, ringing beside her ear. She then collected her thoughts and wrapped her arms around his waist. Smelling the man's sandalwood scent on her shoulder. Luo's heart was unprecedentedly calm. We'll go back immediately. She opened her mouth, her voice was so low that only the both of them could hear. Immediately she gently pulled apart the distance between the two of them. She smiled and looked at Qinghao, her charming eyes were overflowing with color, sparkling with a resolute light. All right, I'll borrow the black tortoise bead from you. She stretched out her hand and swept it across the moonlight porcelain box. Lowering her eyes, she looked at the lustrous white light on her palm and said word by word, "This is the favor that I, Yiqing Luo, owe you. If there's a day Sect Master Yi needs anything, I will do my best to help." At this moment she no longer concealed her identity. Yiqing Luo. These 3 words came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Yin Qinghao and Yin Yanxia were stunned on the spot. This name was absolutely not unfamiliar. Not long ago the young lady whose name had spread throughout the entire Nirvana realm. In the Southern Continent's exchange meat training, she had saved various academies in various continents. In the Western Continent she had stopped the invasion of the Dark Forces. A young lady, Nirvana realm's new legend, a new myth. Extraordinary strength. Possessing a divine weapon. Having a close relationship with the Overlord. She possessed a peerless beauty that could topple cities. In the Nirvana realm she was known as the female version of the Overlord. Unexpectedly, this beautiful young lady in front of him would be the legendary goddess Yiqing Luo? Wait a minute, Yi Luo, Yiqing Luo? Was it really her? Yin Qinghao's gaze stared intently at Yiqing Luo's face. "Miss Yi, I didn't expect you to be the West Continent's hero, your face. Is this a disguise?" Being in a high position, Yin Qinghao had long since mastered the ability to avoid danger. Recognizing faces was one of the most important skills. Yin Qinghao had absolute confidence. He could distinguish a real face and a disguised face at one glance. It was precisely because of Yin Qinghao's confidence that he was extremely certain that Yi Luo's elegant face was absolutely not a disguise. He had totally not thought of Yiqing Luo as the West Continent's hero. Unexpectedly, this face was actually a disguise. Yiqing Luo touched her own face and smiled as she shot a glance at Zhou Xian. "It's Xian who helped me." Yin Qinghao was completely convinced. Only Dizun could pass off the fake as the genuine one. Even with his fiery eyes of gold he could not see anything wrong. Yin Qinghao sighed silently to himself once again. He hadn't made the wrong choice, standing on the Overlord's side without any hesitation, standing on Yiqing Luo's side. Regarding this matter, I hope that Headmaster Yin will keep it to yourself. Yiqing Luo kept the moonlight porcelain box back into the profound phoenix ring. Yin Qinghao readily agreed. Since Yiqing Luo was here in disguise, naturally she did not want others to recognize her. He wouldn't be so silly to expose Yiqing Luo's identity. "That's right, Miss Yi specially came to look for me. What's the matter?" Yin Qinghao recalled that Yiqing Luo specially came to the main courtyard to look for him as he immediately asked. Yiqing Luo had yet to open her mouth. Beside Yin Qinghao, Yin Yanxiu, who seemed to have lost his soul, said in a hoarse voice, "Miss Yi is here to bid farewell." Farewell. Chapter 2687. After all, he had been in power for many years. His reaction was much steadier than Yin Yanxiu's. As the sovereign of Qingyue sect, Yin Qinghao naturally hoped that Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo could continue to stay in Qingyue sect. After all, one was His Majesty and the other was Master Guiwu. It was enough to raise the prestige of the Qinyu sect to the peak. However, Yin Qinghao was also aware of this. Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo continued to stay in the Qingyue clan. The other factions in the Qingyue sect would think of ways to harass them. Thinking of the Miao father and daughters prancing around these few days. It was also his dereliction of duty as the sect leader. Yin Qinghao naturally wouldn't stop them. He was in no position to ask her to stay. The Great Joy sect's ancestral treasures were all given away. Even if Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo weren't staying in the Qingyue sect. However, this feeling was still there. After exchanging some conventional greetings, Yiqing Luo brought Zhou Xian and left the main courtyard. Yin Qinghao immediately stood up to see him off. After sending Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo off, Yin Qinghao heaved a sigh of relief as he turned his head back and looked at his son who had remained silent all this while. "Ah Xiu, that's not a woman you can think of." "I know." Yin Yanxiu was in a daze as he spoke in a hoarse voice. "She is Yiqing Luo, the one who is hailed as the heroic goddess in the Western continent." "I know. I am not worthy of her." "It's not that I don't deserve you." Yin Qinghao patted his son on the shoulder. This was the first time he had seen his son, who had always been high-spirited, in such a dejected manner. He raised his eyes and looked at the backs of the two people who were leaving together. He slowly said, You can't control her. In this world, I'm afraid only His Majesty can truly walk side by side with her. I'm not stupid enough to fight with Di Zun for a woman. Xianxia took a deep breath. His chest felt a little stuffy, but he forced himself to stay awake. I'm just envious. Towards Yiqing Luo he indeed had a favorable impression. A lady like Yiqing Luo who was unrestrained and had a unique charm. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a negative opinion of her from the very beginning. Basically, anyone who interacted with Yiqing Luo would develop a favorable impression towards her. He knew his place. Having a good impression didn't mean that it had to continue developing. We can be friends. This was already the best ending for him. After they walked out of the main courtyard, Zhou Xian hugged Yiqing Luo's petite figure as his brows were filled with smiles. Lil Luo? A reward, reward, reward. His tone was cheerful. Yiqing Luo seemed to be able to see the shaking tail behind Zhou Xian. It was becoming more and more like a canine pet. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. She kissed him on the lips happily and said, "This is the deposit. The rest can wait until we go to the Peach Blossom restaurant." In the study room. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhou Xian was by her side, she would probably not be able to make a decision till now. It was Zhou Xian who gave her great courage. Zhou Xian must really want her to become stronger. Only by becoming stronger, only by possessing the power to protect himself, could he be at ease and completely open up his world to her. And she would then be able to truly accept all of Zhou Xian. Only by becoming stronger could one protect the people or things one wanted to protect. He did not need to blindly rely on his powerful backer and his own luck to pass his days. Gathering the 4 sacred beast pearls was indeed dangerous. But wasn't there a price to pay for growth? Without danger, how could one grow in adversity? Life couldn't always be smooth sailing. Chapter 2688. She wanted to collect the 4 sacred beast pearls and didn't want to use her life as a joke. She didn't want the people she cared about to worry about her. She didn't want to contract the sacred beast pearls, and after it became her lifeline, it would be snatched away by others. Then she would make herself stronger during the period of searching for the 4 sacred beast pearls. This was growth. Moreover, she already had the 7/7 white tiger sacred beast, scarlet flame vermilion bird sacred beast, and a half-soul state black tortoise sacred beast. As long as she found the azure dragon sacred beast. The 4 sacred beasts were all gathered. She also had a black tortoise pearl in her hands. As for the white tiger pearl, it should be easy for Xiaoyu to search for it in 3 Springs sect. As for the vermilion bird pearl, Gu Jingyu's face flashed past Yiqing Luo's mind. She shook her head. By then there should be a way to make a trip to South Continent. They went to the Peach Blossom restaurant to inform Tao Zi. Yiqing Luo then pulled Zhou Xian back to Qingyue sect. They got the news that they were leaving. All the major forces rushed over in an attempt to persuade them to stay. But under the temptation of Yiqing Luo's huge reward, the overlord, who had turned into an overbearing aura, suppressed the surrounding people so that no one dared to get close to him. Even if it was Yin Qinghao who wanted to hold a banquet for them, his voice was trembling uncontrollably. Why did he feel that as compared to the time in the study? The overlord's aura was even more terrifying. After Yiqing Luo rejected him, the group of them left in a grandiose manner. After Miao Yi and Xian Gui left Qingyue sect, they expressed that they wanted to return to the Miao Stockade village to prepare for the Sacred Maiden selection next month. Yiqing Luo naturally had no objections. But Qi, who was standing by the side, was biting on Xian Gui's robe, not willing to let him leave. Xian Gui was confused by Qi's enthusiasm. In the end, Yiqing Luo went over and carried Qi back. Your magical beast seems to like Gui very much. Miao Yi looked at Xian Gui and Qi and couldn't help but laughed. Yiqing Luo nodded slightly as her hand unintentionally stroked Qi's little head. But her eyes were fixed on Xian Gui. A solemn look appeared in the depths of his eyes. Xian Gui sensed the look in her eyes and moved away from Miao Yi uncomfortably. Miao Yi patted Xian Gui lightly and looked at Yiqing Luo. What's wrong? I'm fine. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she concealed the deep meaning in her eyes. You and Xian Gui wait for us at the Miao Stockade village. See you in a month's time. He watched Miao Yi and Xian Gui leave. Yiqing Luo's gloomy and unclear gaze had yet to be retracted. Howl. Qi, who was in his arms, suddenly let out a low, trembling whimper. calling back Yiqing Luo's senses. Lowering her eyes, she stroked Chi-Chi's little head gently. However, all he saw was Chi-Chi's fur standing on end, and her eyes filled with fear. Afraid? Chi-Chi? Yiqing Luo seemed to have thought of something as she turned her head around. Indeed, there was a man with a dark expression behind her, glaring at Mu Chi-Chi with a pair of vicious eyes. The jealousy on his face was undisguised. You're even jealous of a cat? Yiqing Luo looked at the man whose vinegar jar had been overturned in front of her. Her little hand comforted Chi-Chi and kept Chi-Chi into the pet space. Chapter 2689. Chi-Chi's childlike voice was still trembling. If you have the ability, go and stand in front of Master Dizun. If you can stay calm under Master Dizun's gaze for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, then Chi-Chi will lose. Chi Yen snorted coldly. Chi-Chi also scoffed. Why? You don't dare, do you? Don't laugh at me if you don't dare to. Chi Yen, I wouldn't dare? Would I, the mighty holy vermilion bird, be afraid of a human? It's not that this sacred beast doesn't dare, but this sacred beast disdains it. In the end, Chi Yen still did not dare. He was just trying to save face. Yiqing Luo withdrew her divine sense and raised her eyes to look at the gloomy man. This man, even if he was poisoned by the love goo, he had already forgotten everything else apart from her. Not only did others fear him, even holy beasts submitted to his aura. Yes, as expected of her man. Yiqing Luo raised her lips, opened her arms and threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms, her arms wrapped around his waist, her coquettish voice was sweet and seductive. Ah Xian, let's go. The young lady's fragrance and gentleness made Dmo Xian's gloomy expression gradually soften. He wrapped an arm around the girl's waist and looked down. His unbound black hair cascaded down his back. As he lowered his head, a few strands of black hair fell on his face. People were coming and going on the streets. On the second floor around the corner, a woman who was about to put a glass of wine into her mouth happened to see this scene. The man was extraordinarily handsome like a god, and could be said to be peerless in his generation. His eyes were as deep as ink. His facial features were so regular that no flaws could be found. Her rosy red lips were pursed, showing a kind of alienation and indifference. However, when the man looked at the girl in his arms, it was as if a 10,000-year-old iceberg had been melted by something. The wine glass in the woman's hand shattered with a crack. The woman's face was ferocious and filled with murderous intent. She glared fiercely at the figure, and the person in her arms. When his gaze landed on the young but extremely ordinary girl's face, he felt a chill run down his spine. The woman's jealousy and hatred burned like fire. Yiqing Luo was lying on top of Dmo Xian trying to pacify the vinegar jar. Suddenly he felt a strong murderous intent. She frowned and looked in the direction of the murderous aura. However, he didn't see anything. At the same time, the killing intent vanished. It was as if the murderous aura she sensed was just an illusion. Yiqing Luo was just about to push Dmo Xian away, wanting to head to the opposite pub to see what was going on. However, her waist was tightly hugged by the man's warm and thick palm. Lil Luo. The canine pet's voice carried a hint of displeasure. He seemed to be annoyed that she wasn't paying attention to him even though she was trying to soothe him. Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian's blazing black eyes. She blinked her eyes. In the end, she buried her head in his arms. Forget it. After all, this was the main street and there were people coming and going. Even if she really went to the tavern, that guy with the murderous aura had probably left long ago. Later he would ask Peach to go to the tavern and check which customers had been to the second floor. Pacifying her husband was the most important thing. He seemed to be extremely satisfied with Yiqing Luo's action. Dmo Xian's stiff face finally revealed a faint smile as his lips curled. Hey, the two of you. Are you leaving or not? When are you going to stop showing off your love? Yan Xiaoyi, who came late, tugged Xiao Jin's arm as she looked at them in disdain. Chapter 2690. Yan Xiaoyi. F***ck, can't we just have fun? Xiao Jin lowered his eyelids and saw that Yan Xiaoyi's expression was ugly, but he remained silent. He narrowed his eyes. What, you're not satisfied? Yan Xiaoyi. Mother***ker, whose side are you on? To Xiao Jin, this godly teammate. Yiqing Luo gave a thumbs up as she laughed heartily and hooked onto Dmo Xian's arm, walking past Yan Xiaoyi and walking straight ahead. Yan Xiaoyi gritted her teeth and pinched Xiao Jin hard, glaring at him. Damn it, she didn't want to talk to this blockhead anymore. This commotion. Yiqing Luo then threw the murderous interlude to the back of her head. Peach was clear about Dmo Xian's current situation. So he arranged a room in the basement for Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo. Gui Wu liked the peace and quiet, so he also stayed in the basement. As for the others, they stayed in the wing rooms of the Peach Blossom restaurant openly. Everyone knew these representatives from the Heavenly Academy, although they were all very young. However, they were all very close to Yi Luo. They would stay at the Peach Blossom restaurant. Yi Luo must also be at the Peach Blossom restaurant. As long as Yi Luo was here, the Overlord must be there too. Master Gui Wu would definitely be there. Therefore, all the major forces would take the initiative to come to the Peach Blossom restaurant to clock in before it was time to eat. Rain or shine, no matter what. During this period of time, the business of the Peach Blossom restaurant was so hot that the tables were almost full. For the past few days, Peach had been grinning from ear to ear as she counted the taels of silver. However, 5 days passed in a row. The crowd only saw a few representatives from the Heavenly Academy and Zhou Mo who had been following beside Master Gui Wu. The ones he wanted to see. However, there was not a single shadow to be seen. And in these 5 days, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had always been in the basement. Because Dmo Xian's reason was indeed rather complicated. Of course, in these 5 days, Yiqing Luo also took the opportunity to enter the Azure Dew bracelet and cultivate. Before Yin Qinghao's birthday, Yiqing Luo had already successfully passed the 3rd floor of the Purgatory Tower and obtained the reward. Although for now, all the rewards in the Purgatory Tower, she couldn't use it in front of the public. To prevent the people of the upper realm from discovering the origin of these secret techniques. However, any one of these secret skills could shake the entire Nirvana realm. After learning it, it would be a life-saving amulet. Right now she was not strong enough and could not use it as she wished. But she firmly believed, one day in the future, she would definitely be able to use these secret techniques without restraint. Previously, Yiqing Luo hadn't had the time to research on the 3rd story's reward. These few days it was a good opportunity for him to study it. This was a study. Yiqing Luo expressed that this 3rd reward was simply tailor-made for her. The reward for the 3rd floor of the Purgatory Tower. 3rd grade Holy Fire. The legendary top-grade flame. According to Old Song's introduction, there were a total of 10 levels of a 3rd grade Sacred Fire. The 1st level of the Saint Fire and the 3rd level of the Saint Fire were precious fire seeds used to refine elixirs and tools. The success rate of apothecaries was low to begin with. He had the Divine Dragon Furnace and a 3rd grade Sacred Fire. Her success rate in concocting medicine was not even 100%. This was secondary. After the Holy Flame passed the 3rd level and reached the 4th level, just like Scarlet Flame, using the Holy Flame as an attack weapon. Towards the 3rd story's reward, Yiqing Luo really liked it. Hence, Yiqing Luo continued to research on the 3rd grade Sacred Fire. As a result, Dmo Xian felt exceptionally dissatisfied. Chapter 2691. The young lady was wrapped in a robe as she laid down. The red robe was messy and the young lady looked as though she was lying on top of a burning flame. It set off that elegant face like the blazing sun, dazzling and dazzling. Dmo Xian gazed at Yiqing Luo for a long time. Somewhat unwilling to be left out, he occasionally bent down and kissed her lips, then kissed her face. But he didn't get any response from the young lady. His heart was getting more and more frustrated. Ever since they reached the basement, other than the day when his Lil Luo gave him that reward, until now Lil Luo had been in this unconscious state. Although Dmo Xian didn't have any memories other than Yiqing Luo, but his instincts were still there. Naturally he understood. Yiqing Luo's current, unconscious state was actually entering a spiritual consciousness space, carrying out some kind of training. Dmo Xian was very unhappy. Dmo Xian felt aggrieved. He hoped that his Lil Luo could accompany him all the time, talk to him and automatically give him rewards. But every time Lil Luo woke up, seeing Lil Luo's eyes sparkling, her face filled with joy, pulling him to talk about her improvement and growth. He was filled with grievances of being abandoned. He couldn't say it out. He liked to see Lil Luo smile. He liked to see Lil Luo's eyes sparkling. The rascal Dmo Xian's slender fingers played with the red belt on Yiqing Luo's waist. Just at this moment, the young lady's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. She turned her head slightly and met with Zhou Xian's peerless face. The familiar sandalwood scent made her feel at ease. She smiled brightly as she bumped into Zhou Xian's arms. This bump. The loose belt on her waist was tugged. A cool breeze seeped in from the opened red robe. Yiqing Luo's body, which was pouncing towards Zhou Xian, froze. Following that, she silently lowered her eyelids. On seeing her own red robe falling apart, revealing the tender-colored inner garment inside, Yiqing Luo's face suddenly turned red. She lifted her leg and kicked Zhou Xian off the bed. She immediately sat up straight and quickly tied the red robe properly. Xian, what are you doing? Zhou Xian didn't have the slightest bit of precaution as he plopped down on the ground, his face still filled with bewilderment. A pair of inky peach blossom eyes looked at her without blinking. He looked like an innocent canine pet. The adorable Yiqing Luo couldn't hold it in for a moment, as she continued to berate Zhou Xian. She began to reflect. Had she been so engrossed in the third-grade holy fire that she had neglected her dog-type pet? Especially in that way. After giving her family's pet meat. With the addition of love goo, she was even more enticing to dog-type pets. It was inevitable that canine pets could not control themselves. Therefore, that was why he took advantage of the time when she went to the Azure Dew bracelet to cultivate the third-grade holy fire. To do such a thing? However, Yiqing Luo's self-reflection in Zhou Xian's eyes. But it became, little Luo Air was angry. She was angry that he had disturbed her cultivation. Zhou Xian's pair of dazed peach blossom eyes blinked as he blinked. All of a sudden he was depressed and pursed his thin lips. His head drooped and he looked like a little wife who was wronged but didn't dare to say anything. Xian. Why did he suddenly release a low pressure for no rhyme or reason? Yiqing Luo slid down the bed and stretched out her hand to pull him. Are you hurt from the fall? Chapter 2692. That expression, which was like an abandoned puppy, made Yiqing Luo's heart shrink slightly. She instantly blamed herself. The man in front of her was the man she loved the most. For her, his body was implanted with love and centrifugal worm. His thoughts, his everything. Now it was only for her alone. She had many things to consider. She had many things to think about. But Zhou Xian only had her now. She was Zhou Xian's entire world. To what extent had she given Zhou Xian the cold shoulder, to make him who had transformed into an arrogant dog-type pet, to reveal such a careful expression? Yiqing Luo's heart tightened. So tight that her breathing was a little suffocating. Lil Luo. He called out again. His face was filled with grievance, with an indescribable heartache. Yiqing Luo's expression turned gentler. She squatted down and her little hand slowly wrapped around his big palm. Following that, she held his big palm and placed it by her lips. Her soft pink lips pressed on it. Her brows were filled with a sweet and gentle smile. How can I bear to be angry at Xian? It's my fault. I shouldn't have disregarded your feelings and blindly researched on the third-grade sacred fire. Zhou Xian's handsome face, which was filled with grievance, upon hearing Yiqing Luo's voice, slowly dispersed as though the dark clouds were pushed aside. His eyes shone slightly. Yiqing Luo seemed to be able to see the two drooping ears on his head slowly standing up. Yiqing Luo let go of his hand and turned to hold his face, placing her forehead against his. I love Xian so much, how could I possibly be angry at Xian? So, Xian, don't be angry at me, alright? Xian. The young lady's voice was intentionally trying to curry favor with him. Like a feather, it floated into Zhou Xian's heart. His eyes were filled with smiles as his face once again revealed a loyal dog-like smile as he suddenly opened his arms, encircling Yiqing Luo's slender waist. Lil Luo, I want a kiss. He had always used practical actions to express his emotions. His words had just landed. Yiqing Luo's body leaned backwards slightly. But the man's arm protected the back of her head, until her body was pressed against the side of the bed. He then leaned down and kissed her on the lips. Bang! The door was pushed open and Tao Zi strolled in. Qing Luo eat? His voice stopped abruptly when he saw the situation in the room. Even though she was experienced and knowledgeable and had done things like squatting on rooftops and peeking at live broadcasts at this moment, she couldn't help but blush. Peach quickly closed her eyes, turned around and walked out of the door. I went to the wrong room. You guys continue. With that, she slammed the door shut and left in a hurry. The relationship between the Overlord and Qingluo was really good. No matter when, they could always show off their love. Peach went directly to a private room on the second floor of the Peach Blossom restaurant through a secret passage. Pushing open the door, Yan Xiaoyi had already started eating. Behind the peach there wasn't any sign of Zhou Xian or Yi Qingluo. Yan Xiaoyi squinted her beautiful eyes and smiled teasingly. "Why are you alone? Where are they?" Peach rolled her eyes at her. "You already know the answer." Yan Xiaoyi laughed even more teasingly. "It's broad daylight and you can't control yourself. Young people need to control themselves." Temperance. Chapter 2693. The smile on Yan Xiaoyi's face instantly froze. She turned her head. As expected, she saw two figures walking in from the open door. Yi Qingluo nestled in Zhou Xian's arms as a faint smile hung on her lips. If one took a closer look, one would be able to tell the deep meaning behind her smile. I didn't restrain myself." Qiao Jin scratched the back of his head as that ordinary-looking face was filled with curiosity. Not waiting for Yan Xiaoyi to open her mouth, Yi Qingluo very kindly took the initiative to remind her. "If you were to control yourself, Xiaoyi would not have said that young people need to control themselves earlier. She's just shy and intentionally used this sentence to indirectly remind you to control yourself." Facing Yi Qingluo's serious nonsense, Qiao Jin expressed his utmost belief. After that, he put on a serious look. Hugging Yan Xiaoyi's shoulder, he spoke in a low voice guiltily. "Sorry, Xiaoyi, I didn't consider your feelings. But I will definitely restrain myself and not let you be too tired." Yan Xiaoyi. The usually astute Qiao Jin. Why was it that when he was in front of Yi Qingluo, he was always swayed by one sentence from Yi Qingluo? He really was a blockhead. Yi Qingluo gave a low laugh as she pulled Zhou Xian to sit beside Yan Xiaoyi. Just as she sat down, her light laughing voice was transmitted into Yan Xiaoyi's ears. "He will only turn into a blockhead when it comes to matters related to you." Yan Xiaoyi was struggling against Qiao Jin's hands as she paused slightly. Yan Xiaoyi swiftly turned her head sideways. She saw that the young lady who spoke earlier had already turned into a gentle and helpless little bird as she snuggled into Zhou Xian's arms, acting coquettishly as she said something. "Xiaoyi, are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere? I have no prior experience. I will." Qiao Jin saw Yan Xiaoyi not saying a word and instantly panicked. Yan Xiaoyi immediately raised her hand and sealed Qiao Jin's mouth. Thinking back, this man seemed to really, as long as it was related to her. His intelligence was totally not on the line. This kind of private matter. How could he say it out directly in front of so many people? Didn't she want her face? But it was precisely because of Yi Qingluo's provocation. The others didn't continue to tease Yi Qingluo and Zhou Xian about being late. The Peach Blossom restaurant's business had been booming in recent days. Even the dishes that Yi Qingluo and the others were eating had become much more plentiful. Yi Qingluo picked up her chopsticks and was about to pick up some food. Beside her ear, a man's voice filled with anticipation sounded, "Lil Luo, I want you to feed me." Yi Qingluo's chopsticks trembled and almost dropped on the table. She looked sideways at Zhou Xian, and Zhou Xian's jet-black peach blossom eyes blinked as he looked at her attentively. His smile was filled with anticipation. "Earlier you said that you're in the wrong, so little Luo wants to feed me to please me." That gaze was focused on her as if she was the only one in his mind. Yi Qingluo's heart instantly softened as she picked up the chopsticks, picked up a piece of tofu and blew on it until the tofu's temperature was acceptable before she brought the chopsticks to Zhou Xian's lips. The smile between Zhou Xian's brows was filled with satisfaction. He opened his mouth and ate the tofu that Yi Qingluo fed him. He ate contentedly. The more Yi Qingluo fed, the happier she was. Especially when she saw Zhou Xian's handsome face being stuffed till it was round. It was so adorable that her young lady's heart was about to burst. The surrounding crowd expressed that they hadn't even eaten their meal and were already stuffed to death by the dog food. Chapter 2694. After all, to be able to make the noble and elegant overlord like this. So adorable to the point of exploding. A rare occurrence in 100 years. Only this time, they naturally wouldn't make a sound to disturb him. Once the overlord was cured, they could use his dark history to threaten the overlord. Thinking about it, the future was infinitely beautiful. Yiqing Luo fed Diamo Xian a mouthful while feeding him. The curvature of her lips was still sweet. Yiqing Luo sent another chopstick to Diamo Xian's lips. No matter how fast she fed him, Diamo Xian would immediately open his mouth and stuff food into Yiqing Luo's mouth. No matter how hurriedly he ate. How cute he looked when he was being fed. But the man's natural elegance was still there. Diamo Xian had nothing in his mouth at this moment. Seeing Yiqing Luo's chopsticks coming over, he opened his mouth and bit it. Yiqing Luo couldn't keep her chopsticks as she looked up at him. She saw the man's peach blossom eyes overflowing with a teasing smile. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. Ah Xian. Diamo Xian bit her chopsticks as his lips curled up in delight. But he refused to let go of her chopsticks. After a while, the surrounding people's eyes were filled with teasing smiles. Yiqing Luo realized that he was after all the overlord, so she couldn't continue to be so adorable. She stretched out her hand and pinched his face. Be good Ah Xian, let go first, everyone is watching. He smiled and loosened the chopsticks that he was clenching tightly. That pair of chopsticks was imprinted with a man's teeth mark. Yiqing Luo stared at him angrily as her little hand used force and pinched his face fiercely. Then her fair cheeks turned slightly red. Yiqing Luo then gave a light humph. She was about to let go. But she saw Diamo Xian suddenly raised his hand and covered his face. And covered the hand that she placed on his face with his big palm. A piercing pain made Diamo Xian's heart feel a twitching pain. Suddenly his mind was in a mess. It was as if a large snowflake had bloomed in front of him. Yiqing Luo, who was held by Diamo Xian, thought that he was going to act coquettishly again. But when she saw that pale face, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped fiercely. Immediately following that, Diamo Xian's smiling eyes gradually lost its radiance. In an instant, it was as if a deep pool had sunk into a deathly stillness. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo panicked and immediately placed her other hand on Diamo Xian's face, calling out his name. His hand had yet to come close. Suddenly a gust of wind blew over. Pa! Yiqing Luo's hand was burning with pain. The chopsticks in his hand also fell to the ground. The people around didn't even have time to recover from the sudden change. Even Yiqing Luo was still in a daze. His wrist was suddenly tightened by an enormous force. She frowned in pain. Woman, what kind of person do you think I am? Do you think you can make me like you? The cold voice was devoid of any warmth. Yiqing Luo's delicate body trembled slightly. She fluttered her eyelashes and slowly looked up. Sure enough, he was met with a pair of eyes that had been gentle and affectionate just a second ago, but were now incomparably cold and detached. Familiar yet strange. The centrifugal worm had taken effect. Yiqing Luo slightly pursed her pink lips, slightly turned her wrist and pulled her hand out. The expression on her face was very calm. The moment the young lady's soft arm was pulled out, Diamo Xian unconsciously tightened his fingers, as if he wanted to hold her tightly. Chapter 2695. His heart ached even more. Diamo Xian's consciousness became more and more blurry. He seemed to use all the strength in his body to retract his outstretched hand. He closed Mo's eyes. This wasn't a reaction he should have. This girl. Over and over again he had used various means to get close to him. She touched him, teased him, and even shamelessly kissed him forcefully. If it was any other woman who would dare to be so presumptuous in front of him, he would have killed her long ago. But why couldn't he do it? When facing her, there will always be the feeling of being unable to control one's emotions. What was going on? Overlord, you. The other people at the table also stood up. They creased their brows as they carefully called out to him. You don't remember Yiqing Luo? Do I need to remember her? Diamo Xian's voice turned gloomy as his face darkened. Peach shrank her neck. It's fine if you don't remember. Why are you so angry? If I say I don't remember, then I don't remember. Diamo Xian's gaze turned cold like a sharp blade shooting straight at Peach. Peach quickly shrunk behind the ghost warrior. Yiqing Luo quietly watched this scene in front of her. She knew it very well. It was Diamo Xian with the centrifugal venom acting up. He remembered everyone but not him. Whether it was in the past or everything that they had experienced together. In Diamo Xian's memories there was only him alone. He remembered everyone in the devil class. He remembered everyone in the Three Springs sect. It was just that he did not remember her. However, he didn't remember, but she did. Even if it was Zhou Xian with the centrifugal worm acting up. She knew his habits like the back of her hand. For example, now the reason why Zhou Xian was so furious at the peach. In the end, it was all because of her. Zhou Xian thought that Peach was reminding him that some time ago, because of the centrifugal venom, he had a rebellious mentality towards her, and wanted to torture and kill those people from the various powerhouses in Joy sect. She kissed him forcibly. Zhou Xian did not want to remember this matter. He didn't want to remember that he had been molested and kissed by a woman. That was why he was so angry. Was he unable to accept being kissed by her? Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly, revealing a sense of desolation. Her pink lips pursed slightly as she raised her charming eyes and fixed her gaze on Zhou Xian. The person who made you angry is me. Why do you have to take it out on an innocent person? You also know that you've offended this lord? When Zhou Xian heard her voice, his heart surged with an indescribable rage. Yiqing Luo raised her hand. On the back of her hand, the red mark left behind by Zhou Xian's slap was extremely clear and had yet to dissipate. I kissed you and you made a move on me. We don't owe each other anything. Ha. Zhou Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes, his eyes filled with murderous intent. As though he was ridiculing Yiqing Luo for overestimating herself. Towards Zhou Xian's invisible pressure, Yiqing Luo was totally fearless. She slowly curled up her lips and looked at him with a faint smile. The great overlord, who is said to be omnipotent, is afraid of the feelings of a little girl like me? This lord is afraid? Zhou Xian seemed to have heard something funny as his eyes turned cold. In this lord's eyes, you're just a woman with ulterior motives. Do you really think that relying on Ghost Marshal to protect you, you can strut around in front of this lord? Chapter 2696. Miao Yi wasn't here. She didn't know what method to use to wake Zhou Xian up. He still remembered the last time. It was all because of her kiss. Right now, she could only choose to use a kiss to awaken Zhou Xian's consciousness. Only by letting Zhou Xian fight with the centrifugal worm, would he be able to break free from it and wake up. Yiqing Luo understood Zhou Xian. Naturally, she knew how to provoke him. And the most important prerequisite of this method was Zhou Xian's body that loved her, and the soul that loved her. Even if under the erosion of the centrifugal worm, Zhou Xian had forgotten who she was, and absolutely could not bear to really kill her. What she relied on was Zhou Xian's love for her. Indeed, just as Yiqing Luo's voice fell, Zhou Xian's expression suddenly turned gloomy. His seemingly watery peach blossom eyes surfaced a dangerous cold glint. This woman really wouldn't shed a tear until she saw the coffin. Goading. His voice had just fallen when his body turned into an afterimage. No one could tell when he took action. His body was already standing in front of Yiqing Luo. Getting close, the man's elegant sandalwood scent had already seeped into her nose. Her long curly lashes fluttered, her pink lips curled slightly between her brows. There was an overflowing allure. Why don't dare? Her words fell. She groaned in pain. The man's slender fingers, without any tender feelings for the fairer sex, locked onto her lower jaw. He bowed his head. The peerless face enlarged in her eyes. Yiqing Luo's lower jaw hurt, but her smile was still there. The corners of her lips even curled into an extremely shallow cold arc facing Zhou Xian's approaching face. She didn't close her eyes like an ordinary lady. Instead, she used this kind of enchanting, ridiculing gaze, staring straight at him. Just when their lips were only a finger's distance apart, Yi Zichen's expression suddenly changed. Zhou Xian suddenly stopped. His brows creased, maintaining such a close distance, looking at her with cold eyes. The young lady refused to be outdone, fearless. This scene could be said to be extremely pleasing to the eyes. The man was handsome, the woman was beautiful, and both had a strong aura. Visually, it created a very different visual sensation. The two of them maintained this posture for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. The man's warm breath. It was as though Yiqing Luo's face was tainted with his unique scent. She narrowed her eyes. Suddenly, he leaned his head forward. His hand also grasped Zhou Xian's wrist. Following that, he exerted his strength and pressed Zhou Xian against the tightly shut door. Yiqing Luo's action. No one had expected this. Even Zhou Xian. They were all stunned for a moment. But not waiting for him to get angry. What greeted him was the unique fragrance of a young girl. That familiar softness fell directly on his lips. Zhou Xian's eyes darkened. The second time. This was the second time he had been forcefully kissed by this woman. The crowd at the side. What the f***ck? Qing Luo was just too domineering. Such a queen, she was so handsome that she had no friends. In this world, the only one who dared to forcefully kiss the overlord was probably Queen Qing Luo alone. Qing Luo had no time to care about everyone's inner world. She kissed the man's lips hard. Her soft body pressed against him tightly. A hand held his wrist tightly. There really was a kind of the déjà vu of a man forcing a good woman. The more he kissed, the deeper Zhou Xian's eyes sunk. He wanted to push Qing Luo away. In fact, it was an easy thing to do. But when his eyes met with the young lady's pair of devilish and enchanting eyes. Chapter 2697. He let the girl do whatever she wanted in this position. It wasn't until the stabbing pain in his heart that his consciousness gradually became clear. Only then did he realize the situation he was in. His face darkened. With a flip of his hand, he grabbed the young girl's collar and pulled her away. The girl's soft and fragrant scent was a little further away from him. However, the restlessness in his heart caused his expression to darken. It was as if he would explode at any moment. You. Zhou Xian gritted his teeth, his peach blossom eyes overflowing with viciousness. Qing Luo turned her head over, her pink lips were still stained with a trace of glitter. She lifted her lips and smiled brightly. She even deliberately stuck out her pink tongue and licked her lips under Zhou Xian's gaze. The alluring look in her eyes became more and more obvious. Why? You don't like being kissed? It was an extremely seductive action. This caused Zhou Xian's heart to suddenly stop. It was as if something was surging towards the place 3 inches below. A trace of red light flashed across his eyes. This woman, he really needs to be taught a lesson. At this moment Zhou Xian was completely unaware. His current thought was not to kill the woman in front of him. Instead, he wanted to press this woman under his body and ravage her mercilessly. Let her cry. Make her beg for mercy. Zhou Xian's eyes turned darker and redder. Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she stared at his face. Her brows were still that enchanting. She could clearly see the emotions in the man's eyes. She chuckled softly and her devilish aura intensified. Taking the opportunity when Zhou Xian wasn't paying attention, she purposely leaned towards Zhou Xian's lips and once again kissed him. The fragrance was somewhat alluring. Zhou Xian was shocked by this action as he swiftly let go of Qing Luo's collar. His figure at this moment retreated to a distance of 10 steps away from Qing Luo. He looked as if he had been frightened by something. Qing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles. Overlord, are you shy? Zhou Xian's expression was so gloomy that it was terrifying. Especially after he heard Qing Luo's voice, his gaze turned extremely low. Qing Luo could feel that under his gaze, her entire body seemed to be enveloped in a chilly intent. His blood gradually became ice cold. However, she forced herself to hold on and suppress the chill in her heart. He maintained his smile. Scram. Icy cold words were spat out from Zhou Xian's mouth with great force. His whole body was tense as if he was suppressing the anger in his heart. Scram. Qing Luo held back her smile as she murmured this word. Her brows rose as she smiled again. Overlord, you can't bear to kill me? Even if he had forgotten her. Those who had been corroded by the centrifugal goo would be estranged from her. Ultimately, Zhou Xian couldn't bear to kill her. She had made the right bet. Regardless of whether he was a canine pet. Or had he forgotten her now? They were all so arrogant. Do you really think I won't kill you? Zhou Xian couldn't suppress his emotions any longer, and with another flash, he appeared in front of Qing Luo, grabbing her wrist with one hand. The feeling in his hand. Soft and smooth. It was as if a bewitching fragrance was drifting over. He did not struggle. She maintained her enchanting smile and stared at him. His heart tightened and his eyes turned even colder. Suddenly he pulled open the room door and grabbed Qing Luo's wrist, directly throwing her out. Qing Luo's body staggered a little. She steadied herself. He could hear a series of voices rising and falling in his ears. What's going on? Overlord threw Miss Yi out of the room? Could it be? Could it really be like what the rumors said, that Overlord has already disliked Miss Yi? Chapter 2698. Yiqing Luo was stunned. Her gaze swiftly swept across the surroundings. She saw that the originally deserted second floor was now filled with people. The one who surrounded the front looked somewhat familiar. Wasn't it those few forces from Qinyu sect? Behind them the second floor was filled to the brim, even those who lined up all the way to the stairs. There were other forces and quite a number of onlookers. There were at least 50 to 60 people in total. She frowned as she looked at Tao Zi, who was following closely behind. Tao Zi also shook her head blankly. These people apparently heard that Zhou Xian and Gui Wu were having a meal in this private room. So each and every one of them specially blocked the entrance. He wanted to see what the legendary Lord Overlord looked like. And also wanted to have some relations with the legendary Overlord. But who was the one who leaked this news? After Zhou Xian threw Yiqing Luo out of the private room, he then realized that there were so many people surrounding them. He frowned slightly as he recalled his earlier actions and subconsciously looked towards Yiqing Luo. He saw the young lady's face was slightly pale. A pair of charming eyes swept across the crowd, facing those ridiculing her extremely unbearable words. She seemed as though she didn't hear anything. So stubborn that it made one's heart ache. Suddenly, Zhou Xian's pupils shrank. Heartache. His heart ached for that frivolous young lady? Zhou Xian suppressed this thought and turned around to return to the private room. But from the corner of his eyes he caught a glimpse of a figure in the crowd. His expression congealed slightly. Suddenly his footsteps turned and walked directly towards Yiqing Luo's direction. The surrounding ridiculing Yiqing Luo stopped abruptly. Yiqing Luo heard the footsteps behind her and immediately shifted her gaze, from the surrounding customers, back to Zhou Xian. The man's thin lips were tightly pursed. The expression on his face was exceptionally grave. His footsteps were hurried, bringing along a gust of cold wind. Overlord took the initiative to walk towards Miss Yi again. Is he preparing to coax Miss Yi? From his expression, it doesn't seem like it. In the discussion there were a few jealous voices. In my opinion, Overlord has long disliked Yi Luo. It's just that Yi Luo loves to pester you and he doesn't want to give up his backer, the Overlord. Yi Luo must have heard that the Overlord was having a meal in the Peach Blossom restaurant, so he came here to pester the Overlord. That's why he was driven out by the Overlord. The distance between Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo was getting closer and closer. There were a few who were ridiculing Yiqing Luo earlier, but now felt a little timid. Why do I feel that? Overlord is going to look for Yi Luo to apologize. I reckon that she really wants to coax Yi Luo. He's heading in the direction of Yi Luo. These people's words made Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Something was not right. The person Zhou Xian was looking for. Not her. Zhou Xian's vision was not on her at all. Moreover, his expression was so grave. She pursed her lips at the moment when Zhou Xian came over. She took the initiative to avoid his footsteps. Coincidentally, Zhou Xian brushed past her side. He had no intention of stopping. Yiqing Luo looked towards the direction where Zhou Xian was walking towards. When his gaze landed on that figure he felt a chill run down his spine. Her charming eyes faintly floated a trace of fluctuation. Zhou Xian didn't even turn his head back as he walked towards that direction. I told you, the Overlord didn't even take a look at her. Why don't you take a look at that face of yours and still trying to seduce the Overlord? Pui. Chapter 2699. Xiao Wu. Zhou Xian's voice was as indifferent as usual. However, that intimate form of address made the onlookers unable to remain calm at this moment. A tall and pretty figure walked out from the crowd. The lady was dressed in a dark blue long dress, and on her outer robe, there were large dark patterns which outlined a blooming gorgeous flower. The most breathtaking part was the woman's beautiful face. Under the dark slender eyebrows, that pair of bright eyes seemed to be condensed from thousands of years of frost. Cold and elegant. As though it was synonymous with the lady in front of him. Overlord. The lady's voice was also extremely melodious, with a hint of coolness. Zhou Xian frowned as he stood face to face with the lady. Why are you here? Me. The lady raised her brows as she raised her head in puzzlement. She looked past him and looked at Yiqing Luo, who was standing at the same spot. Don't you know the reason why I'm here? Zhou Xian seemed to know who she was looking at as his brows knitted even tighter. I'm not sure, but Xiao Wu, this is Nirvana realm. Your existence violates the balance of Nirvana realm. The lady felt that something was amiss. Her beautiful eyes swept past those surrounding customers as she suddenly thought of those discussions earlier. You and Xiaoqing Luo quarreled? Xiaoqing Luo? Zhou Xian's eyes sunk slightly. Are you familiar with that lady? This time it was the lady's turn to frown. Without waiting for the lady to ask, Yiqing Luo finally made a move. She walked towards that lady, raised her hand and pressed on that lady's wrist. Xiao Wu, I'll tell you about this matter later. This lady was not someone else. She was precisely. Because Zhou Xian extracted a part of his consciousness and turned it into a clone to follow beside Yiqing Luo. She was worried that Zhou Xian would get into trouble in the upper realm and rushed over to check on the situation. There are too many people, let's enter the room first. Yiqing Luo looked at the open door behind her. Jun Qingwu narrowed her beautiful eyes as she followed Yiqing Luo into the private room. Zhou Xian's face was gloomy as he looked at the lady who was chased out by him, walking back into the private room and pulling Xiao Wu in. His heart inexplicably surged with a sullen feeling. Extremely tense and irritated. His brows were almost knitted into a bundle. After a while he strode towards the private room. The door of the private room was closed again in front of everyone's eyes. Those few people who ridiculed Yiqing Luo earlier had an ugly expression on their faces. With the help of the few forces in the Qingyue clan, he said hesitantly, husband and wife always quarrel. Miss He is just throwing a tantrum at His Majesty. What do you mean by throwing a tantrum? Who is Dizun? What right does she have to throw a tantrum to be with that ugly Yi Luo? Hearing this sentence, among those ladies who ridiculed Yiqing Luo, a lady who was dressed in a white long dress, pretending to be elegant, was unable to conceal the jealousy on her face. The girl looked to be about 18 or 19 years old. Her figure, on the other hand, was exquisite like a dragon. It was curvy and perky as it should be. That's right. The overlord ignored Yi Luo and walked towards that woman. It is obvious that the cold-looking fairy-like woman is the overlord's true love. The women around him nodded in agreement. Do any of you know who that woman is? When did such a beautiful woman appear in the Northern Wave continent? The overlord called that woman Xiao Wu. This form of address is very intimate. I feel that her relationship with the overlord is not simple. Chapter 2700. That lady seems to know Miss Yi. She should be a friend of the overlord. What friend? Can a man and a woman be friends? Earlier the overlord directly walked past Yi Luo and towards that lady. It doesn't look like an ordinary friend. In the midst of the discussion, suddenly the lady beside the white-robed lady covered her mouth and laughed. Why do I feel that? That is the official wife of the overlord? The moment the lady said that, the surroundings immediately turned silent. The next moment there was a sudden uproar. In that case it really looks like it. The moment she came, the overlord immediately left Yi Luo. Yi Luo's subservient look. One look and you can tell that he is someone's concubine. You didn't see, just now Yi Luo supported the overlord's official wife all the way into the private room. Yes, I saw it. Humans were like this. One of them started. Then there would be people who started to imagine the aftermath without leaving any leeway. Then they would imagine it as a real thing. Then more and more people would continue to spread the continuation of the imagination. The imagination would then become real. The white-robed lady originally had a gloomy expression because of that lady mentioning the official wife. But after hearing the crowd's discussion at the back, the white-robed lady's brows was finally tainted with a smirk filled with hostility. The commotion outside. The few people who were locked in the private room didn't hear it. At this moment the atmosphere in the private room was exceptionally strange. Except for Gui Wu, who was still minding his own business eating. The others were sitting upright on their chairs, their gazes uniformly staring at them. Yiqing Luo stared at Zhou Xian's icy cold gaze and directly pulled Jun Qingwu over, letting her sit beside her. Jun Qingwu's gaze shifted between Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo. Seeing Yiqing Luo's calm countenance, she frowned. Did you two quarrel? I wanted to quarrel with him. Yiqing Luo sighed helplessly. What exactly happened? Jun Qingwu pursed her lips tightly. When I went to the upper realm, his eyes lit up at the mention of you. It wasn't easy for him to get the chance to come back from the upper realm and he rushed back without stopping. How did it become like this? Yiqing Luo hooked her arm around Jun Qingwu's neck and whispered 3 words into her ear, centrifugal worm. Jun Qingwu's pupils suddenly widened as she looked at Zhou Xian. Yes. Yiqing Luo nodded. We can only wait for the sacred maiden's selection to find a way to cure the goo before we can end this situation. Jun Qingwu was speechless. How much longer are we going to discuss till? Zhou Xian's voice was filled with a thick chill. His eyes sunk as he stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Not knowing why, when he saw Yiqing Luo whispering to Jun Qingwu, that gloomy feeling surged into his heart again. Especially when he saw Yiqing Luo and Jun Qingwu sticking to each other's ears. That feeling of irritation almost made him unable to control his emotions. No matter how Zhou Xian tried to control his emotions. That furious voice made Jun Qingwu and Yiqing Luo raise their eyes. Especially Jun Qingwu, an obvious shock surfaced on her face. In Jun Qingwu's understanding, Zhou Xian had always been a godlike existence. Nothing, no one could affect him. The only one who could see a different emotion from Zhou Xian was Yiqing Luo, these 3 words. Chapter 2701. But now Zhou Xian couldn't even control his own emotions. It was because Yiqing Luo? Not waiting for Jun Qingwu to react. A gust of biting cold hurricane struck and wrapped around her arm, pulling her backwards. This pulling force was sudden and domineering. Jun Qingwu couldn't stand properly and knocked against the chair she was sitting on. She creased her brows in pain. However, the man who created this hurricane didn't notice this. Instead, he used more strength and flung her behind him. The mahogany chair fell to the ground with a loud crash. Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo stood up abruptly and looked at the man who went crazy for no reason. If you're unhappy with me, just come at me. Why do you need to vent your anger on Xiao Wu? Zhou Xian's expression turned colder. His eyes met with Yiqing Luo's eyes. After a while, he seemed to be threatened by the young lady's urgent gaze. His face was gloomy as he waved his sleeves and the hurricane suddenly dissipated. Jun Qingwu's body swayed slightly as she suddenly lost the pulling force of that hurricane. Her leg, because of the earlier knock against the chair, couldn't take the force for a moment and fell to the side. That stunning face was slightly pale. Xiao Wu. Yiqing Luo's footsteps swayed as she directly passed by Zhou Xian and swiftly caught Jun Qingwu. Her speed was very fast. When she brushed past Zhou Xian, her shoulder accidentally knocked against Zhou Xian's body. Her arm caught hold of Jun Qingwu firmly, and she immediately helped her to sit down on the spot. That collision had caused Zhou Xian's tall and sturdy body to take a small step back. But the young lady who knocked against him didn't even look at him. Thinking of this, Zhou Xian's arrogance seemed to have fallen to the bottom. The surrounding air seemed to have condensed into frost at this moment. He fixed his gaze on the young lady who was half squatting on the ground, checking the injury on Jun Qingwu's leg. His ink-black peach blossom eyes were like 10,000 years old ice, shattered into pieces of ice shards in his eyes. He released a low pressure. Everyone in the house could sense it. Yiqing Luo was no exception. After bandaging Jun Qingwu's wounds, she called Yan Xiaoyi and Peach over and helped Jun Qingwu over. After doing all of this, she clapped her hands and turned around. She was not afraid of the man behind her. He looked like he wanted to strangle her. Instead, she stepped forward, raised her hand and grabbed his collar. An elbow was placed horizontally in front of his chest. Zhou Xian, what exactly do you want? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes and her voice was no longer like before, intentionally pretending to be coquettish. Haven't you messed around enough? Kissing him did not suppress the centrifugal goo. Yiqing Luo already didn't know what to do, to make Zhou Xian return to the love worm. He could hear the anger in Yiqing Luo's tone. Zhou Xian's eyes sunk. An indescribable gloominess spread in his heart. Wasn't she trying to pester him? Now it was all for a woman. Speaking to him in such a tone? Because he had injured Jun Qingwu's leg. She was even disdainful of his deliberate flattery? Yes. He was very clear. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo had been seducing him, forcefully kissing him. Although it seemed overbearing. But she had been intentionally trying to please him. Even if she forcefully kissed him, she carried that kind of cautiousness. But now, because of another unimportant lady, she treated him coldly?